Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sitting in for Uncle Wisdom again. He's doesn't like this cold, rainy weather, so he asked me to fill in for him today. He wanted me to talk to you about a subject that we don't discuss maybe as much as we should, and that subject is healing. And I think there may be a variety of reasons why we kind of shy away from that subject. One is I don't think we as a church have done a good job in this area of praying for people and people being healed. And I don't think that we understand disease like we should. I don't think we've taken the time to really study it and see what God's Word has to say about it. We can tell that there is a direct correlation between sin and sickness and disease. We'll be covering a lot of scriptures on that as we go through this. And I think there's one thing that we can all agree about healing and in this area. We can all agree, regardless of our denomination, that God does not want us to sin. And since God does not want us to sin, and there being a correlation between sin and disease, then I think we can safely assume that God does not want us to be sick. God does not want us having disease. That's not His heart for His children. And many times in the past, I have, and all of us have, we've prayed for folks that God will heal them. And what we do most of the time is we kind of tack onto it somewhere in there, well, God, if this be your will. And I really believe that saddens God's heart when we do that. I think it shows our lack of knowledge about what God has to say. I think it shows our lack of knowledge about who He is and what His desires are for His children. And I think the reason we do that, again, we don't understand, but in that process, we are shifting the responsibility of healing from us to God. God, if it be your will. So now it's up to Him. And I really believe that God has done all He's going to do about healing. He did that through His Son, Jesus. I believe healing is available for us. And rather than God, if it be your will, and trying to transfer that responsibility to Him, we need to begin to look at ourselves and what our role in healing might be. We're going to have 21 poems. There'll be 3 DVDs, or you might be watching over the internet. Hopefully we will be answering some of the questions that maybe you have about healing. I know I've learned a lot through this process. I have watched a ministry for several years that was started by Henry Wright in Georgia. And Henry went to med school to be a doctor, but God had some other plans for him and called him into the ministry. And as a young pastor, occasionally people would call him and ask him, Pastor, would you pray for me? I'm sick, I have this issue going on. And he would pray for them as he felt like he should. But he realized that like 5% of the people that he prayed for was healed. And he looked around, and that was about typical with most churches and most pastors. And he wasn't content with that. And with his medical background, he began to really dig into God's Word and see what God had to say about it. And he found out God had a lot to say about healing and its causes and its roots. And over about 4 decades now, in working in that area, Pastor Wright has learned that there are over 600 diseases that have a spiritual root, that have a spiritual cause. And to me, that's extremely exciting news. If I can identify the sin that's creating the disease and deal with that sin properly with God, then that frees God to heal what I have going on. And so again, that's really exciting to me. And stay with us. We're going to do 7 poems in this series, and we're going to try to build us a base here. And we're going to start with a poem called Spiritual Healing.